For our keynote and closing, we have, you've been watching these amazing architects, their designs with their engineers, putting together sometimes quite finicky little projects. And they're amazing just on the aesthetic question, and I think everybody, and even the architects are thinking, what's the cost of these things, and how does this really translate into larger projects? And most of the time, at least in the past with ACAW, we've had mostly dialogue has been our educational focus has been architects and engineers trying to help them understand this product. But there's always a missing part of this, which is the developers and the builders who could see this product as something to invest in, as part of the larger thinking of their sustainability goals, their development goals. And we're very lucky today because we have somebody, Orel Samson, who's joining us. Orel's work is, and he'll cover this. This is a project in Toronto that they did with Boston Valley Terracotta. So it's close to home in that sense. Also not so far from Buffalo. But Orel is a partner. The Allied Properties is the developer, and Orel works for them. They're co-lead in this project called The Well, 7-building mega project in Toronto's urban core. And so a lot of, I think, the issues that we're looking at and interested in is, what is the value proposition that Orel makes when he's thinking about a project like this, but also the terracotta that plays a big role in it. So with that, happy to have Orel present his project. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. Before I start, I actually do want to say I looked at the pieces outside before I started here. Incredible. So such an awesome job, such awesome work you guys have done. Really glad to see it, and glad to be here to present. I was actually really happy when I got a call from John asking me to come here and talk about the well. I could talk about the well for days. It's been something that I've been a part of for the past 5 years, coming on 6 now actually. Especially this building that Boston Valley was a part of, which we call Building E, which I'll get into a little bit more. It is like the crown jewel of this whole campus. There's 7 buildings on the campus, but Building E is the crown jewel. This project, it was the most ambitious project that we've ever done for Allied. We partnered with RioCan at the very beginning. The land, when we actually purchased the land, we were involved with another partner, Diamond. So there were actually 3 owners to start with. What happened after that, Diamond, they got bought out, and it was just Allied and RioCan who actually went forward with the project. The air rights were actually sold, so all the buildings you see kind of above these podiums, all the air rights were sold to residential partners. That all kind of ties into the amount of people that were actually involved to make this what it is, not just from an ownership standpoint, but also from consultants to just make all this work together was incredible. So just as kind of a more high level, the well, it's located in Toronto, obviously. It's located right at the intersection of Spadina and Front. Now that is just a little bit west of the main downtown core. But the King West neighborhood, it's really defined by these former industrial blocks, and these hidden laneways, exterior terraces, this real post and beam type architecture. And our goal was really to bring the flavor of this neighborhood into the well, and the well would act as kind of a bookend for this neighborhood. And we wanted to be very clear, and we wanted to define exactly what we don't want to be. We were not the financial district of the city. This area, this locale has a lot of character, and you could just see it with the type of architecture in these buildings. So what we looked to do was, with that neighborhood, with all the little laneways and kind of terraces and patios, we wanted to bring that all into the well. And our goal was to not make the well a community that's just isolated in and of itself, that it's more of an extension to this King West community. Now, overall, it's a really large site. This actually, prior to what it is today, it was the land of the Globe and Mail. They were a big publisher, a big newspaper out of Toronto. The land itself was almost 8 acres. All the podiums that you see throughout the campus here are all commercial. On top of those commercial podiums, there are these residential towers. And you can see here, kind of along this side here, that is actually where King West comes right through and meets the well. So part of that is, along Wellington Street, those are more of the low-rise brick and beam style buildings. And as you kind of move into the southern half of the site, you get into this open space where there's all the retail and open public realm. So as far as the office goes, this large tower here on the very left, that is a 38-story office tower. All office, topped by a rooftop restaurant, actually. The retail area, that is 3 levels of retail, and we'll see once we get into, I'll go into more detail on how that's all spread out, because there's 320,000 square feet of it, along with a 70,000 square foot market. And the residential piece of this is close to 1.2 million square feet as well, spread out between 6 towers. 3 of those towers are rentals, and 3 of those towers are condominiums. And with the towers too, there's a big variety. So there's the more commoditized buildings, and then there's also the ultra exclusive kind of buildings along Wellington. That would go anywhere between $1,400 and $1,500 a foot, Canadian. The more commoditized buildings, more between the 1,100 to 1,300 range. The other part of this, which obviously you don't see, is there's 6 levels below grade. The first level below grade is traditionally it's P2, but we call it the lower ground. That is actually part of the retail concourse. Below that is parking, and there's one entire level that's actually dedicated to loading. Because you have retail, you have office, you have residential. You need so much capacity to be able to handle all the different types of deliveries that are actually going to take place here. So there's an entire level on P4, which is dedicated to loading, and it has all the waste, all the bike lockers, all the loading areas for every single one of these buildings. So the amount of coordination that it actually takes to bring all that together is massive. The other big thing, and one thing we got a lot of community consultation on, was the public realm. This adds 33% to the public realm. So we wanted to get a lot of feedback from the community on what they wanted to see, and that's kind of how we came up with the overall kind of flow of how the public realm was designed. Oh, skipped one. Sorry. One of the unique features of this site is we have formed very early on a partnership with Enwave. Enwave is a utility in Toronto, and they service about, I would say, maybe 200 buildings now in the downtown core. They have infrastructure, and what they do is they actually have a deep lake water cooling system. So they have pipes that would run 5 kilometers out into Lake Ontario, and however 80 or so meters deep, pulling cold water from the lake to their plant, where it's then distributed and actually helps to cool like a lot of the buildings around the city. Now the well, our partnership with Enwave acted as a western expansion to their entire infrastructure network. So you can see there was massive work that was done with Enwave to actually bring their infrastructure west, and the well actually acts as a node, a separate plant for Enwave for their western expansion. So within the well, below the lowest level, there is actually another 180 feet down that we went, and it's a massive storage tank, and it acts as a big thermal battery, and it will ultimately help to supply their future needs for expansion to other buildings. But the entire well, commercial and residential, is fed through this deep lake water cooling system, both heat and cooling. So that was a really big thing for us, because one thing for Allied, we have not recently, but we have been building, the ESG and sustainability part of our portfolio, and this was our first major step to making that a reality. So huge commitment for in terms of time and cost. Not gonna lie, it really affected the schedule, and really costed a lot more than we thought, just like many other things. But it was completely worth it, because that ultimately is what we're striving to achieve, is being more sustainable. Now, this is actually a little bit, even today for me, hard to imagine that we've been at this for 10 years. We formed the partnership with RioCan in 2012. Since then, we broke ground with demolition and excavation in 2016, 2017. And today, we're about on the 7th phase of occupancy of this campus. You can kind of imagine that, you think about how starting 7 buildings on 8 acres of land, all in one phase. The construction did not take place as phases. It took place as one giant excavation, all starting at one time. Now, the office is fully occupied. There's tenants that are operating in the building, and we have further occupancies coming up. We're actually on our 7th now, and it's hopefully the last, with our grand celebration targeting the end of the year. So we're planning to open this puppy up until by the end of the year, which is a huge milestone for us. So I mentioned earlier that it takes an army, and that's really what this was. The design partners that we teamed up with, really well known worldwide actually. We had to kind of split this up in a way that it made it manageable. The architect for the entire retail component was BDP Quadrangle. For the office was Harini Pontarini, and the executive architect was Adams and Associates. The Wellington market, so the 70,000 square foot market on the P2 level, that was GPA. And then there's Claude Cormier was the landscape architect, along with Architects Alliance and Wallman Architects for the residential buildings. So just to talk a little bit about the office first. This building actually didn't start out this way. This building was more of a monolithic kind of structure. And when it was first presented, the city wasn't really on board. Just east of this site, there's a park. and it's a fairly large park right across from Spadina. And the problem with the original design was the city didn't want us to block the sunlight on the park. They wanted to maximize the amount of time that we actually got sunlight on the park. So that's what actually led to the current design, where you have this kind of stepped building. And at the time, you know, I mean, it's just like, I'm sure we all go through this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, shoot, like, you know, what is this going to do for us now? And it actually turned out to be a very good thing for us, because it enabled us to really have these different floor plates throughout the building. And, you know, we were able to kind of cater to a lot of different style of tenants. So on the lower floors, you know, we had these, kind of interconnected podiums, and this lower floor was 60,000 square feet. So we were able to cater to tenants with, you know, 500 plus employees. As you go up the tower, you know, from these mega floor plates, you go down to more manageable kind of medium-sized plates between 30,000 square feet. And as you get these terraces, you kind of step back and you go to 20, and then the smallest floor plate, you go to 10,000 square feet at the very top. And that also allowed us to have this restaurant at the very top, because not only is the floor plate perfect, a perfect size for a restaurant, they were also able to make use of the terrace at the very top as a patio, because we didn't have any equipment on the roof because of OnWave. We had we eliminated a lot of the chillers that we'd need, so that gave us a lot more usable area on the roof. So, you know, a lot of this really kind of helped us with getting different tenants in the building, and now we're 98% leased. So we're well on our way, because this office building is open. The retail was a little bit different. So this slide, it shows the kind of material selection that we went with, and that the design team kind of suggested to us. And it was really important, because if you look at these are the podiums. So these are all the commercial podiums. And if you look at building A, B, and C, which you'll see, those are along Wellington. That's where I was saying, you know, it kind of pulls the influence in from King West. Those buildings are this very kind of rustic brick. And as you kind of move west, you know, into even building C and then building D, you start to see it's more of a more of a manufactured look. Building D was more of a precast brick. And as you get to building E, that's where the terracotta comes in, and that's more of, you know, is this ultra refined type of style that we really liked. That was south facing. It was along Front Street, was extremely busy. It kind of it paved the way for, you know, these grand staircases that would come down into a courtyard, and you just see this massive, this massive building with huge arches that's full of terracotta, and we'll get to the exact photos of that building shortly here. Master plan of the retail was also, you know, there's a lot of intent behind this plan. You could see that, you know, the placement of, you know, large anchor tenants with more, you know, medium-sized units to micro units. That was very well planned out, because it really pulled people in, you know, having to kind of walk through these colonnades to get to, you know, from one side to another. So what you'll see here is those 3 levels of retail that I was actually talking about. So the ground floor, which you'll actually see at the top right, that ground floor, that pulls you in right from, you know, Wellington, right from Front, and right from Spadina Avenue, and that'll take you right through. There's these colonnades that actually go along on the interior faces of all these buildings, and we call this the spine. You know, it goes right down the center of all the buildings, and there's these 2 separate colonnades with bridges. There's 17 bridges across this entire site that between level 1 and 2 that'll bring people from one side to another. We didn't want to restrict people to just one part of the campus, right? So that kind of gave that kind of fluid motion throughout. And then there's a lower ground. This was a pretty unique space because, it's the lower level. It doesn't get as much light. It's not as glorified as like the ground and the second floor. And we figured, not as many tenants would actually want to move down there. That's where the idea of the food market came into play. This is actually going to be all individually kind of curated vendors. So, there'll be the bread guy and, the meat guy. And then along its perimeter, there's all these operable windows that open right into the spine. And it just spills out into patios. So it's a very kind of European-inspired type of place. So above all of this is a massive 35,000 square foot canopy. Now that doesn't create a conditioned space through the spine, but it just protects you from the elements. So really, I know, we share a climate here. That really helps with making this a four seasons type of place to be, right? These are a couple of renderings of this is the main courtyard. So if we think back, that's Wellington. As you come down these grand staircases with seating areas along the side, because this is all public realm, right? So this is not only going to be a spot where people come and work. This is people live and people also play here, because this is going to be activated in so many different ways, because we hold these assets long term, both Allied and RioCan. We look for kind of long-term value, and this was something that we really wanted to do. We didn't just want to build something that was single use, and we see that around the city sometimes, and we really wanted to do something that brought people in and wanted people would want to be there. This, you could actually now start to see our crown jewel, Building E, which was actually, this was very early rendering. So you can kind of see the arches that have taken shape. The massive canopy you could see in that rendering there. It spans the entire site. And you could think of it as, a big hammer. That the handle is going all the way through to the front end where Spadina is, and right where this courtyard is, it kind of breaks away and goes off to either side. When we thought about Building E, we really got our inspiration from this building. So this is a separate building. This is a building that's in Toronto at Queen and John, and it's beautiful. It's early 1900s. It's terracotta, and we loved it. This is where we told the design team very early on that, we want something that is unique. We want something that is beautiful, and it's different between, at least for us. What I've seen from my years at Allied is, we really look we will pay for design where we know we're going to get the value in it. And when we have a building like this, we will really pay. We will pay for any design that can get us this, because we have leases that are 5-10 year leases. We're not just looking at getting people in here for we're not looking at just one tenant. We're looking at multiple tenancies, and we're looking at creating a place where people want to be. So this building here, this was actually this is maybe a couple months ago now, but Building E, and this is how it's actually turning out. One of the unique kind of things of this building, because when it first started out, it didn't look this way. When we first started out, it was squared off. It wasn't as complex. One thing that we really pushed for was we really wanted to embrace the kind of true nature of terracotta. We wanted the arches, we wanted the curves, because we felt that we didn't have enough challenges on the job. So we thought, let's take it a step further. And actually, truth be told, when we were first looking at this, we didn't know if it could actually be built. So that's where I think there was a lot of coordination and a lot of assistance that was required through the Boston Valley team. We knew very early on that this is the way that we wanted to go. And we knew very early on that this is going to pull people in, because when you come into the site, this is the first thing you see. Every tour that we've taken through this project, we spend about 15 minutes just standing in one of these walkways, staring at this building, explaining how we got to this, because everybody is so interested in finding that out. And you could see the canopy that's been built and how it all ties in. It's flawless, right? Like, it just flows so well. So this is one thing that with a project this long, we've essentially seen everything that could go wrong, I think, has gone wrong, because we've gone through COVID, we've gone through strikes, we've gone through every possible thing in the past 10 years. And throughout, first of all, we remained building, so we stayed in construction the entire time. We did not stop. And I got to take my hats off to Boston Valley, because they actually were able to deliver on the product, stayed on schedule, one of the very few that actually were able to stay on schedule. But I really got to give my hats off to Boston Valley for doing that, because we were extremely nervous. We actually were so nervous to the point where we came in and visited the plant. So back in 2019, I came out here with our partner at RioCan, and we took a tour through the factory, and we were blown away. They took a whole day to kind of walk us through, and took their time, because we're not the experts, and they understood that, and I thought that was incredible. After we walked out of here, our minds were a lot more at ease, and I think that this really shows how important it is to really not just be kind of we're not trying to be a developer that's just more here for just quick maximize your square foot value and get out. We want to really create things like these that stay long term, and that we're going to hold for future value. So I do want to show a video. We had a time-lapse video made. We had a camera that was right across from the site, and we were able to capture from the time we started demolishing the Globe and Mail site all the way through to excavation, all the way through to the structures actually going up. So I'm just going to play this video. I thought it was really, really cool to see here. So you can see the old structure there being demolished. And now the excavation starts. And one of the interesting features here was, we barely had any groundwater on the site, which was a blessing. And you could see the large tank, the N-Wave tank that started to take shape. Cranes are going up. At the height of construction, we had 9 cranes on the site. And throughout here, we had, on a daily basis, when things were in full swing, we had about 900 workers that came in and out of here on a daily basis. So you can see we're starting to come up, and what I was talking about with the N-Wave piece, where there was a bit of a left out structure because the tank, it took time, and it was one of the first things of its kind to be built here. within an existing mixed-use community. You could see the tower now starting to take shape. And overall, even with the excavation, I think there were about, I heard a stat of maybe 70,000 truckloads of dirt that were actually hauled away from the site. It's unbelievable. And the canopy, you can start seeing now that the spine is going to start taking shape. The canopy used over close to 600 tons of steel for that canopy. That was a huge endeavor. That was all actually manufactured in Germany, and it was shipped here. We did a mock-up actually in a local place to test that canopy, but huge project with that canopy. That was fully custom. So now you could see the glazing starting to go up on the building, and also you could see the cross bracing. And the cross bracing on that main tower is another kind of throwback to the King West brick and beam look. So that is the presentation. If you guys enjoyed that, thank you.
Thanks so much, Orel. So are there any questions for Orel from the audience here? Christine, go ahead.
You mentioned before you visited Boston Valley, you were extremely nervous about using the terracotta.
I over-exaggerate.
I don't, never mind, but could you explain what the nervousness was about? Nervous for what?
I think what it had to do with was we weren't sure that what we were actually asking for was constructible. There were compound curves, there were arches. We started the building with a very basic square design. We knew we wanted to use terracotta, but what we were asking for was really something unique and beautiful, and we didn't know that what was being designed was actually achievable. That's why we were nervous, and that's why we wanted to get our partners in early so that they could work with our design teams, and we knew what was actually possible.
Yeah, perfect to have them in early, because that would have been my next question, like at what stage did you start to collaborate?
Yeah.
Because that's necessary. Then
it is.
New things can happen.
It is, yeah. And we like to be right into the weeds of what's going on. We want to know exactly how this stuff is being made, and we want to know what it takes, because that's how we truly understand what goes into this, right? So I think that was part of the reason we wanted to actually pay a visit to the plant.
And had you been researching into historic terracotta and have a close look at all those buildings with all those shapes and high-rises in terracotta? Did you look into that?
We looked at a bunch of examples, but I think that the kind of standout was the building we have on Queen and John in Toronto. That's a very kind of historic building, and I could pull up that slide again just so that that one there. Yeah, the inspiration really came out of this one. Yeah, no problem.
Other questions?
Oh, yeah.
So the tower has a lot of glass on it. I wonder if you looked at using another kind of reducing the window to wall ratio to make it more products like this being used.
Could you repeat the question, because the webinar wouldn't have caught it?
Oh, yeah. So the question was, would we look at using other materials for the tower to reduce the amount of glass that we used on the main tower? We didn't look at that initially. We knew what we wanted with the curtain wall, and we knew what story we wanted to tell as the buildings kind of progressed from the Wellington side with building A all the way over, past building E to a more modern look, with the cross bracing and stuff like that. So we didn't actually look at other materials to complement the glass.
Are there any lessons learned you could share between the design of the panels and perhaps
So I think that for,
Just-
yeah, let me,
Question repeated, please.
oh, sorry. So I think the question was, would we, were there any lessons learned from the construction of the panels and as they were erected? Were there any takeaways? I think that one of the things that was key was getting these partners in early. And to an extent, I think that, you know, we maybe didn't do it early enough. I think that, you know, once we got into the detailed design and the shop drawing development, that's where we really found that there were certain issues. And, you know, we have construction managers that work directly with Boston Valley, and Clifford was the actual contractor. But what you don't see here was that there was an entire scaffolding structure that went around the entire building. And each piece of stone was kind of hand kind of delivered to each level of that scaffolding to be put in place. You know, one of the things that we were told early on was the good thing about this product is, you know, the air vapor barrier and all the kind of backing was actually sufficient as an envelope system, and that the terracotta was more of a feature. So we were able to occupy the building before we even got terracotta installed. You know, the other kind of takeaway, another big takeaway for us was just the intricate shapes. They just took so much time, so much effort, and you know, remaking some of these pieces is going to be quite a task, because even at the joints, these actually, you can't see it here, but the joints, they're all sealed. You know, that was one of the things that we were worried about operationally, was how is that going to act as, you know, bugs and insects and, you know, things nesting into those little joints all throughout the building. So we sealed the entire thing. But yeah, I mean, as far as the challenges go, there were many. But I think one of the key takeaways was we would definitely want to get an expert in here early on.
Could you talk a little bit about your time at the plant with Boston Valley? You said that de-stressed a lot of your thoughts about working with them
Yeah.
when you came here to Buffalo. And just from an owner's perspective, like what it was like to walk through the plant, and what kinds of observations you were making that gave you that level of comfort about
Yeah.
the scale of production.
Yeah, so I think you know, one thing we were concerned about was we weren't sure how fragile the material was, and we were worried about shipping. And you know, we really wanted to understand how they packaged the material and how they shipped it, so that when we actually received it, that we weren't going to see little chips and, you know, damaged pieces, and how that would ultimately show throughout the building. So they took us through the entire process, the entire packaging process. They showed us how it was all protected and shipped. They also took us through you know, the molds, and they showed us how they were actually creating the product, which, you know, that was my first time seeing it, and I was blown away. That gave us a level of comfort, because there was really somebody there to kind of guide us through, like, you know, a typical kind of you know, production cycle, and what it actually takes, and why it takes the time that it takes, and what the restrictions are for compressing that schedule. We met their entire project management team, so even, you know, the people in the background that worked on, you know, the design and the, you know, ultimately the shop drawings and stuff like that. So with all of that, I think we saw how organized they were, and that's what really led us to, you know, a higher level of comfort with the whole thing.
I have a question about the glaze. The aesthetic is quite strong here. I wondered, in the same way that you mentioned that some of the shapes had evolved in the process, was the decision for that aesthetic and the range and glaze here an initial concept, or did that come with knowing the material more?
That came with knowing the material more. That wasn't an initial concept. So that went through, you know, at least 5 or 6 cycles of mock-ups and, you know, matching kind of all these pieces and the type of pattern that we wanted to see. That's where these different, you know, shades of cream came into play. So.
This reminds me of the World Trade Center site in terms of density and number of workers and that kind of thing. So I'd be interested to know how you get 900 workers off that site every day. And was there a construction manager kind of overseeing the entire site project?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had, commercially, we had 2 construction managers. And we had one of the bigger builders in Canada, Ellis Don. We had Delterra, which is the commercial arm of Tridel, who actually built the condominiums. So 2 separate contractors. Obviously, you know, time and space was a concern because when you have something this big that's all interconnected, there is no clear break. And you know, one of the major kind of concerns for us was how we delineate time and space between all these contractors. And you know, throughout construction, there were so many different plans and strategies that were developed, and we worked directly with the Ministry of Labor to come up with you know, delineation lines between the 2 contractors, fences, you know, hard kind of barriers that kept construction crews from one side of the project on that side of the project, and having to go through a separate security checkpoint to access another side of the project. So each and every contractor on the site went through the same safety orientation. So, you know, the 2 contractors were kind of like meshed together with that, with Ellis Don and Delterra. So I think if I were to do it again, we'd probably just have them, you know, do a JV with the 2 of them. It just makes it a whole lot easier when you have one unified team as opposed to 2 separate contractors working with an imaginary line in between. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, thanks.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a very unfair question. So you walked into this room past 8 examples by designers of new inventions about terracotta.
I know where this is going.
Do you have any comment?
I thought you were going to ask me to pick which one I like best. Thank God. Thank God. Do I have any comments on what I've seen? I thought that, you know, there were some very unique examples, and I'd be really interested in, unfortunately I wasn't here for the presentation piece, so I'd be really interested in how those can be applied to create stuff like this. You know, one of them that I saw was this really kind of rough edge on the material, and it looks awesome. I loved it. And, you know, it actually almost looks like wood. You know, you have this terracotta curve, and then you almost have like this wood-looking material on the edge, and it looked like a live edge, and I thought that was awesome. But, you know, practically, how does it work, you know, with, you know, when you have occupants coming into place? So I thought that was great. You know, even there was another one where I saw that was steps, and the color on those steps and the design and the details was amazing. I love that. And even incorporating all the like plants in those pieces, I thought was amazing. And even, you know, the sheens between more shiny to kind of more of a matte finish. And I'm sure I'm probably butchering all of this that you guys are work so hard on, but I thought it was unbelievable. Don't ask me to pick a favorite, but I the whole time I was looking at that, I was just thinking, you know, how do we apply that to make places like these better, right? Because not only did we do this terracotta on the exterior, but we also played a little bit on the interior. So as you come into the main lobby in this building, I guess I didn't mention this, but the terracotta actually does tie in. So it actually does flow into the interior lobby as well. So, you know, pieces like that would work great as feature pieces in main lobbies, and, you know, just enhancing the look. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Presentations will be online eventually, so I think it's interesting to watch, to listen. Yeah, yeah.
I'll have a look.
Yeah,
Share
also
'em.
for future ideas. I wasn't in a team, so I'm
I will have a look. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orel. That was wonderful. Okay, so it falls on me to close this wonderful day, wonderful week. For us, ACAW is education, and even though on one hand I think for the teams it's research, ultimately it is a question of educating each other about architecture, about contemporary concerns in architecture, and on top of that, certain kind of materials that at one time seemed rather old-fashioned but now seem hugely contemporary and very much tied to contemporary needs and wants. So I feel that not only from the perspective of education, but also the perspective of research, these kinds of opportunities don't come along very often. And me as an educator, somebody who's kind of worked and tried to work with lots of industries, this is a very difficult thing to have happen. There are other concerns in the same way that Orel's saying there are other concerns. Sometimes the bottom line, that is the major concern in industry, and therefore this is another expense. And I think Boston Valley is unique in that regard, goes the extra mile to realize that this is more than just an aspect of their business, it's really an aspect of how we do architecture. So with that, I want to send out just another congratulations to Boston Valley. What an amazing, amazing ACAW we've had this year. Thank you, John. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andy. Thank you to the whole team. And also, once again, thank you to the University of Buffalo for hosting us. It's a wonderful thing to come back every year to be back at the Smart Lab as well as the shop and engage the students there. And every year we're bringing more students into this, which is another wonderful aspect to sort of see that ceramics are also becoming part of people's pedagogies within all these other schools of architecture. So with that, we will bring this event to a close. We will open the doors. Across the way is a reception. Please make your way to that, and let's talk some more terracotta then. Thank you all.